You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K24. It's myself, Mamutsi, alongside me again, the one, the only, suited and booted as always, looking fly, Mr. Scott Perry. How you doing, Scott?
Oh man, I'm doing great, Mo. Doing great. Just end of another draft, 2024 draft has come to a close.
Summer League is right around the corner. But before that, let's break down what happened on draft night. But first and foremost, we talked about what you expected from having the draft split over 2 days. I have some thoughts about
Okay.
the way that this second day of the draft has been done. I like the theory of having the draft split over 2 days, as you said. You get more time
Mhm.
to think about your picks and whatnot, whatnot. But the coverage of it really just felt like an episode of NBA Today, sprinkled in with some draft
Mhm.
picks here and there. I didn't
Right.
really enjoy how it was presented. I also think it was a weird dynamic having it in a studio and like the guys being drafted are there in the studio walking out in front of a green screen and shaking hands with a deputy commissioner. Didn't seem as
Mhm.
special as usual NBA drafts when it's obviously done in the same place as the first round. But what was your take on it?
Okay. First time out for it, so you never know what it was going to look like on television. From a, Again, I wasn't sitting in a war room this year, but just thinking about what it would be, and then kind of watching it manifest itself as I watched it on television. I, I'm sure, and I'm going to talk to a number of my brethren after this. I bet they liked it
Oh yeah.
because I think that a lot of the trades that were made in the second round probably were a lot smoother because not only did you have some discussions the night before, but you had all morning and early afternoon leading up to this draft to have a lot more teed up. Don't feel as rushed. You had 4 minutes versus 2 minutes between the picks. So I would imagine from the team side, I bet it went very well. Now, I'm sure television coverage now TV has a chance to go back, evaluate it, look at it, and get it better, for future seasons. And I threw out the thing last year, Mo. I really think the NBA should at least explore the idea of moving the draft around from city to city to really get the engagement of fan bases from around the country taking a page from the NFL.
Absolutely. I agree with you. We did see some movement just before the draft. The Denver Nuggets, who won the championship just over a year ago, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope declined his player option,
Mm-hmm.
which was 15
Mm-hmm.
million, which is
Mm-hmm.
expected, and he is expected to hit free agency. And there are rumors that he could command around $25 million a year. So the Sixers and the Magic are two teams that could be contenders to sign KCP. As we know, he's a winning player. He's won multiple championships. He offers perimeter shooting and lockdown defense. And then, in order to try and keep him, the Denver Nuggets traded Reggie Jackson as well as three unprotected second round picks to the Charlotte Hornets to help them save some money. I think Reggie Jackson was only making about $5 million a year, but that does help
Yes.
with the
Mm-hmm.
luxury tax payments. And then the Denver Nuggets and Jamal Murray are working on a 4 year, $209 million contract extension, the maximum that Jamal Murray can get. What's your take on all of this happening with Denver? Do you see KCP staying? Do you see him going?
Great question, an interesting question. And as I sit here right now, and not knowing all the details, I haven't talked to KCP's representation, and I know he's established himself there and has a comfort level, but I look at it as very much 50-50 because if you look east, at both Orlando and Philadelphia, assuming that Paul George, if he ends up staying there at the Clippers, now KCP, he and Clay Thompson become your top two wing players, and KCP is younger. And to your point, but obviously both are champions, but he may garner even more interest because he's a little bit younger and than Clay Thompson is, and both of those teams could pay him more than you're hearing 25. They may decide to pay him more to make sure they can secure his
Yeah,
services.
they could
So,
give him like a short-term 2 year deal.
oh yeah. So I would be concerned and be a little bit nervous if I'm Denver for sure. because there is real money out there for him, and they're good teams. He goes to Philadelphia, and along with another player, Philadelphia is right there in the mix to challenge in the Eastern Conference, along with the Knicks, to both be challenging the Boston Celtics. And Orlando was a very good up and coming team. They were in the playoffs last year too. You add someone like a KCP, who's a veteran player, who's a champion player, helps Orlando take that next step. So I would be very concerned right now if I'm Denver.
I think he'd be perfect on the Orlando Magic, because essentially you're upgrading on Gary Harris, who, he's unfortunately had a lot of injuries over his career, but at his core is a great 3-and-D player. And if you get KCP, one of the league's premier 3-and-D players, I think that would be huge for the Magic, and they've got the money to spend. I think it's worth taking him on a 2-year deal or so and getting him over there.
And he's a young man from the South. He's from Georgia, and give him a chance to go back to Florida, be a little closer to home. I don't know how much that matters to him at this stage of his career, but could play a role. And I know one thing, as players do begin to age, being able to play in warmer weather year round can be very helpful to the body.
Man, I wish I could be in warmer weather year round, but here we are. Another trade that happened, the Sacramento Kings sent Davion Mitchell and Sasha Vezenkov, plus tonight's 45th pick, to the Toronto Raptors for Jalen McDaniels. A bit of a salary dump here for the Kings. And of course, with last night them drafting Devin Carter, who's looking to be their replacement for Davion Mitchell, they could afford to move off him. Is this a sign of bigger moves to come for Sacramento?
I believe so. Sacramento knows they can't come back with exactly the same team if they want to get back into the playoff round and not get stuck in the play-in round like they were this year. The year before, we know that they were in the playoffs. I believe they were the 3rd seed.
Yeah, they took the league by surprise that year, though. The second time around, everyone's ready for you.
Yes. And so what I believe, they've evaluated their roster. They have to know that they weren't physical enough, number one, as a team, both on the perimeter and the interior. So they've got to address that. They need some people that can defend and compete at a high level, bring a little more grit to that Sacramento team, because they're very skilled. De'Aaron Fox, I was there when we drafted him. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's one of the most elite guards in the league today. Sabonis, excellent all-star caliber player on the interior. So that they make a very formidable 2-man game. I like Keegan Murray as a young emerging player. And then I really like the fact that they were able to retain Malik Monk, because I know they really missed him down the stretch. And his absence probably cost him another chance at being in the playoffs this year, quite frankly. So, but they want to take a step forward. They have to add in that toughness area and the ability to defend. And let's see what they do this offseason in free agency.
Yeah, and Malik Monk did sign an extension to stay with the Kings. A lot of people expected him to be on the move in free agency. He got 4 years, $78.4 million. What's your take on that? Do you think he could have got more on the free market? Because Sacramento aren't exactly a glamorous destination or a contending team. If you think he could have got more, why would he take a discount to stay there?
Well, sometimes, Mo, and especially if you followed his career path, talking about Malik Monk, he's never had really stability in his entire career, and he never had reached really who he could become as a player in this league until he made it in Sacramento. So sometimes it is worth that to a player and his family to take that stability. And I think he has real stability, true stability there in Sacramento. He has a very well-defined role. He's been embraced there. And I worked in Sacramento a short time. And one great thing about a place like Sacramento, of all of the NBA cities, it probably felt as much as more like a college town than any other NBA city. And what I mean by that, the Sacramento Kings are the only game in town. It's a smaller community, and that community really embraces that team, wraps their arm around them, And for a guy like Malik Monk, like I said, who had bounced around a few stops before, showed some promise, but never the consistency, gets there, has his career has really taken off. So it made sense for me when I saw it, for him to stay there and continue his career there and moving forward. And I believe he'll continue to help the Kings in a big way.
Yeah, shout out to the Kings fans. They're a loyal bunch. They suffered for many years and they saw a little bit of success a couple of seasons ago. And there have been a couple of times when people have tried to buy the Kings to relocate them, and the fan base has really rallied around the organization to keep them there. So shout out to the Kings fans. I don't know how many Kings fans are in the UK. I only know one, but maybe that number will grow with what they're building over there. Let's move on to the second round of the NBA draft. I want to talk about one player taken very early on. Now, the first pick of the second round was Jonathan Mobo that the Raptors selected. I don't know too much about him, but the 32nd pick, the second pick of the second round, was Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. And the Utah Jazz selected him. Now, this is a player that everyone expected to be picked in the first round last night. I saw a video of him last night after the draft because he was in the building, absolutely devastated that he wasn't selected. What's your take on why these teams, because I've heard a few different things, what's your take on why he slipped out of the first round?
Every year, Mo, there are a handful of players that the public and quite frankly, a lot of people in the league anticipate going in the first round. And for a variety of reasons, they end up falling out. And unfortunately for this young man, Kyle Filipowski, he was one of those guys. During my time in the NBA, I used to always say this, Mo. When you got down to about 22, so picks 23 through 30, there's probably about 15 names that could go there. And it's only 7 or 8 spots. And a lot of what the good playoff teams are doing down there at the bottom of the first round, you never know. Some teams don't want to take on any extra money, so they want to draft a guy that may be a draft and stash guy with the first round pick, or they're taking a positional need, whatever the case may be, and then that grouping of players somebody out of that grouping of players ends up not having the luck, if you will, of being selected because it didn't fit that particular need for that team late in the draft. I anticipated him, quite frankly, to be in the first round. Now, a lot of things are so analytically based now with the draft. And one of the things I heard about Kyle was that he didn't have any plus length. He's a 6'11" guy, and his wingspan is, I don't believe his wingspan is 6'11".
That's what it's listed
as. 0. Yes, right.
But like analytically, he shot 35% from 3, 8 rebounds a game, and he had a 2.1 turnover to assist ratio. Oh, sorry, my bad. He had 3 turnovers a game and 3 assists a game and 2 turnovers a game. So as a big who can space the floor and is good at making plays, he's someone I thought the Knicks might take at the end of that first round there, because I feel like they could have done with some additional help with their bigs, especially if Hartenstein doesn't re-sign there.
Right.
The thing that I've heard going around today that made the rounds was that he interviewed very badly with the teams that he met with, and that he hasn't spoken to his parents and his family in a number of years. And he has a situation with his girlfriend who had finished doing her master's degree when she accompanied him to his high school prom. So there's a big age difference. I think he's 20 years old and she's like 27 now, but they've been together for a while. How much do NBA teams take into account a player's personal life? Because for a 20-year-old kid in that situation with whatever has happened between him and this woman who's clearly seen the NBA draft potential in him from a young age and found her way in, and then he's been alienated from his family, how much does that weigh into a team's decision-making when drafting?
Well, Mo, you've heard me say a number of times on this podcast that when you talk about bringing players into your locker room, into your organization, you're bringing in the talent and you're bringing in the person. And they're not mutually exclusive. They're coming together. So you're weighing all that. Now, I'm not privy to all of the details surrounding this young man, but obviously teams that did meet with him had some level of concern or worry in having to, that these were things that this young man was going to have to juggle outside of basketball. Now, some teams are better equipped, more comfortable in dealing with certain issues than others, quite frankly. But I don't know if that's the sole reason why he fell out. Maybe we'd have to ask those teams. But again, I've always told you the importance of getting to know the person. 'Cause this month leading up to the draft was the most important month for me always, because it was normally the first time you have an opportunity to get one, two, or up to three times in front of them, meet them, know them. And we've been talking to a number of other people for a year about them, whether it be the coaches from high school, college, competitors that they've gone against, just anybody who's come in contact with them. But our own personal interaction happens the month leading to the draft. And I would say this to all prospects: it is very important. You want to be forthright with teams, because the teams are going to have a lot of this information about you, whatever that information is, good, bad, and indifferent. So you're looking for a guy to be forthright, owning good, bad, mistakes, or whatever, and then come across as people that are willing to be a part of an organization, understand where they're at, and willing to accept coaching and growth. That's where a lot of teams are at right now. And again, I'm hoping that this young man utilizes this as fuel for him. It sounds like that he will, to really have a good NBA career. And the last thing I'm gonna leave you with, I'm gonna leave you with an example, because I remember, and this was years ago when I was a college coach, but it was a young man by the name of Rashard Lewis. I don't know if you remember that name.
Of course.
Very good NBA player.
Yep.
And I was at the NBA draft in the green room with a young man, and God rest his soul, that I had coached in college, named Robert Tractor Trailer, who went very high in that draft. And sitting there at the draft, and Rashard was in the green room. So he was projected to be, and they didn't have as many guys as they invited to draft now. They had like 15, 16 guys. And I remember sitting back in the green room, and everybody was gone but him. And he didn't get drafted in the first round. And I believe he went first or second in the second round to Seattle. And I remember him being devastated. And I was wondering, okay, how is this young man going to respond? Because it's like the world had come down against him. He was in tears. His family and loved ones, were consoling him. But to his credit, he utilized that moment, and he had an excellent NBA career. And I always had a great deal of respect for him, because I watched him at that low point. Didn't know him, but just watched it happen. So Kyle Filipowski's got to take a page from his book, from Rashard Lewis, and say, okay, I'm going to prove to you, everybody who had a first round pick who didn't select me, that I was worthy of that. And I think he ended up in a good spot in Utah anyway. Good coach. He's there with a guy that he talked about emulating his game with, Lloyd Marketing. So be interesting to see how he can develop there. It's a good opportunity for him.
Were there any other players in the second round that caught your eye as interesting picks, aside from the obvious one that everyone's talking about, which I'm sure we'll get to?
Well, a player that went right after Filipowski, who I personally had as another guy that was going to go in the first round, was Tyler Smith from G League Ignite. I really like this young player. I watched him play a couple of years ago in the Overtime Elite League. He was super young. And if you watching film of G League Ignite this year, there were games and moments that he looked like the best prospect of the guys, better than Holland or Bacelis to me, because he has the defined skill. He can shoot the basketball. He reminded me a little bit of a young Chris Bosh. I don't know the young man, so I don't know, how he's wired in terms of is he super competitive or not. But just from a skill perspective, I really like what I saw. Going to Milwaukee, they need young talent on that team. So it'll be interesting to see how he can develop there. He might have, they may have landed a gem there early in the second round because I liked his skill set. So that pick stood out to me.
It's interesting what Milwaukee have done now for the last few years in the drafts. They pick guys who are somewhat project picks. They have high
Right.
upside, but they're not really NBA ready to compete. As a team with Giannis and now Damian Lillard and competing like that, why are they not picking, guys that can come in and contribute right away?
Well, uh, you can look at it one or two ways. And again, this draft here, maybe when they're picking, they don't see guys that can contribute right away. Now, last year, the young man that they drafted out of UConn, I believe they felt he could contribute right away on the defensive side of the floor, and that's the kid Andre Jackson. They knew he had to develop as a shooter, and that's still going to take time. But athletically and defensively, he was a 4-year guy. So they drafted him last year to come in and play some minutes, rotational minutes on the wing. That never manifested itself because again, sometimes there can be a disconnect, and what the front office is visualizing, and your coaches a lot of times are going to default to more veteran players. So it'll be interesting to see, like for a player like him that they drafted last year, how much now Doc Rivers utilized him because Doc didn't have him in the beginning of the year. He got there midway through. So and then on the other end, because you're good, there's also prevailing thought too, if you're Milwaukee, let's get the best young talent. We'll use free agency to go get whatever other veteran help we need, but let's get the best young talent we can get to develop. And so 2-3 years from now, you're hoping that talent emerges. And now that because they've always drafted low, late 20s, and in this case, it was pick 33. The 3 years from now, that player is playing like a guy who was a lottery pick. So those are the two thoughts that you have when you're really a good team like them, and they've tried it both ways. So let's see what happens with this kid, Tyler Smith.
Yeah, Doc Rivers isn't a coach who typically likes to play his rookies a lot of minutes. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can develop some of these guys. And then, of course, the big highlight of the coverage, I guess, on ESPN was the number 55 pick, Bronny James. Shout out to Bronny.
Yes.
I want to give a shout out to Bronny James, Scott, because if
Yes.
I was Bronny James, I would be either a rapper or a Twitch streamer or just chilling in my $1 billion crib. But the fact that he's gone out there and worked his way to actually being drafted into the NBA, credit to him. Credit to him.
I haven't had the pleasure of meeting the young man yet, but everything that I see from him from afar, man, it just exudes a lot of character to me. I mean, starting with the fact that this guy had a life-threatening situation just 11 months ago with the heart issue episode at USC. To come back and then play basketball in December, it's different. You coming back from something like that versus a severely sprained ankle or a broken hand or the mental side of being able to overcome that. I mean, it tells you a lot about his mental toughness already, and he is going through something that nobody's going to be able to give him advice, and even his father won't be able to give him his advice, as great as LeBron James Sr. is. And that advice is navigating being the son of this historic basketball player, and what that's like, and the pressures that come with that from his side. And again, from sitting back from afar, he has navigated that process to date very well. I mean, you hear nothing but great things about him personality. He doesn't come across like, entitled or anything like that. He's working his tail off. And then one thing that stood out to me when I did watch him at the Hoop Summit a couple of years ago in Portland, whether it was the practice or the game itself, he played hard and he competed. And so if you didn't know that was LeBron James's son, you saw a young player out there competing, playing hard, trying to make a name for himself. So I'm wishing him the best. Obviously, there's will be a lot of storylines surrounding this. Not only this summer in summer league, but obviously once the regular season
it's just
starts,
beginning, Scott. It's just beginning.
It's just beginning, and how that manifests itself, will be interesting to say. But to this point, he himself, Junior, has navigated a 5-star way. He's aced that test to this point, and now on to the next one for him. So happy for him and happy for him and for LeBron. I'm sure LeBron is a father and his wife. They're gonna have a very special moment just celebrating this together because it is historic. We've never seen this before.
I did see a funny post on the internet the other day. How is Bronny James going to refer to LeBron when they're on the court together? Is he going to be, Dad, there's a screen on your left? Exactly. I want to know what he's going to call him while they're out on the court.
That is pretty good. That is pretty good.
It's also interesting. Go ahead.
No, it'll be interesting to see, and if they're on the court together, and somehow his dad happens to make a mistake, will he say, "Hey, Dad, man, you missed that one. You missed. I was open over here."
See LeBron vice versa, his teammates sometimes, and we'll
exactly.
See if he keeps that same energy. But it is interesting because we've never seen this dynamic before on an NBA team. So in an NBA locker room, how's it going to work? And the other interesting part of this dynamic is his dad's friend is now the coach of the team as well. So it's not like the coach is the coach. It's the coach is your dad's podcast partner who got him this job. So how is that going to be at play? Is he going to get minutes in the rotation ahead of other people? And how's that going to impact the rest of the locker room if they feel like they're not getting a fair chance? And how it all plays out is going to be very interesting. And I got no doubt that your colleagues at ESPN are going to keep us updated 24/7, 365.
For sure. And look, JJ Redick has a lot of challenges as a first-time head coach. This is another unique challenge. And this is something that he won't be able to call a fellow coach and ask them, how did you deal with this? He's going to have to work through this and navigate this along with his staff themselves. And I'm sure they'll get it figured out because, again, starting with Bronny Jr., his attitude is really good about this. If everybody's very forthright, they'll understand. If he's not ready to be in the rotation, I won't be surprised to see him getting, a lot of games played down in the G League just so he can get minutes, so he can get his rhythm together so that he can come and contribute with this Lakers team. So it's a long year, and the best advice would be just, they got to treat him like every other player on that league and let him earn whatever minutes he gets with the Lakers, and then also really be focused on his development, and I can see him playing some minutes in the G League for a little bit just to get those.
They were adamant on him not signing a two-way deal.
Yes,
but a stint in the G League would definitely help his development.
That's right. Yeah, if he's on a full contract, they just wanted the full contract.
Yep.
I don't see any pushback from him playing any games in the G League if he's not getting minutes with the Lakers. They're going to want that. I'm sure LeBron would want that for him.
Yep.
If that's the case. Yeah.
The interesting thing was Rich Paul saying to teams, don't draft Bronny James. He wanted him to fall to the Lakers, and he said, if you pick Bronny, then we're just going to go and play in Australia instead. I've never seen that kind of leverage from a second-round pick before, ever in the history of the NBA. I've never seen that. I've seen that from guys in the lottery, we don't want to play here, don't pick me, but never for a 55th overall pick in the NBA draft.
Well, and also, it was a silent way of telling everybody, okay, all the noise about LeBron, he's going to opt out, or maybe he can go to my team and go somewhere else. That's not happening. Everybody sees that.
He's staying.
Exactly.
The one thing I will say about this second round is that there are only 28 picks in the second round. There's usually 30. Now, the Suns and the Sixers both forfeited their second round picks due to some sort of tampering last offseason. I get the penalty for it, but I do think it is a shame for two guys out there who are hoping to get drafted who now no longer get that chance to be picked up. I think that penalty, instead of the pick simply being forfeited, should go to a different team, maybe the one that was done wrong by the tampering or whatever that went on with that. But aside from that, I think it was a pretty fun draft. A lot of people weren't excited by it. I think we've had some interesting moves. Any major takeaways, Scott?
My major takeaway again was what we started with yesterday or 2 days ago when we were talking about this draft. And the prevailing thought was, oh, it's a weak draft. There's not any players, all that messaging. My takeaway is there's going to be a player or players that will surprise and become very impactful NBA players and very helpful to their teams that they're at. So it's going to be interesting to watch that unfold. That's the beauty of it. And let's not, Summer League is the first time you get a chance to see him, but that's Summer League play. I've never put a ton on Summer League performance. Obviously, if you drafted a guy, you like to see him play well. But the real truth comes when you get to training camp with all the veteran players and you start playing preseason games and get into the regular season and see who can consistently contribute like what you expect from professional basketball players. So that's what that's the storyline for me. And then lastly, the 2-day draft. It's been 2 days. It was just interesting to see that unfold. I'm sure from the team's perspective, that's something they're going to want to keep moving forward. And from the television side, I'm sure that having gone through it now one time, it'll be even more improved and better viewing.
Well, they can easily improve it by getting me and you on TV next year for it. So that's number one.
All right, okay, there you go, Mo.
Number two,
right,
I want to thank Adam Silver and Mark Tatum for making the second round a little bit earlier. It started at 9 p.m. UK. Now we finished with the podcast. It's midnight. I might actually get some sleep. So I'm happy with it.
I was very smart on their part. I like that and not pushing it back for later. But we also have here. I believe that the first presidential debate is tonight at 9 o'clock too.
That should be interesting.
So that will be interesting. Exactly.
I think we live in a world where we're not far away from Stephen A. Smith doing these presidential debates in the near future. America's a crazy place. You can deal with that mess, Scott.
And knowing Stephen A. would love that.
Oh hell yeah!
To put him in that, you throwing that out, he would love to do that, and
absolutely.
maybe that's in his future one day. I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe. But in the meantime, you guys subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We'll be back on Monday. BJ Armstrong should be back after he's finished enjoying life in New York City.
He's
living good. He's eating good. He's living life out there. Scott, enjoy your weekend, my brother. You have a great one. And everyone listening, I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. And we are ready for the England national football team to disappoint us once again on Sunday. So, Scott, you ain't got into football yet, real football, soccer. I'm going to get you onto that soon. Don't worry. So until next time,
all right.
get buckets.
All right.